Now that we have learned to create blocks, we are going to learn how to add attributes to those blocks. So let's get started. As a reminder, an attribute is text information saved with the block when it is inserted into a drawing. You can automatically generate schedules from blocks with attributes. I'm going to start out by making a copy of this block, and I'm going to explode it so that I can add the attributes to it. When I explode this block, it only exploded this one. The other blocks remained as a block. So with the one I exploded, now I'm going to add some information to it. I'm going to start out by going to my Insert tab and define attributes. When I do that, my attribute dialog box comes up. You will see on the left I have mode, I have an insertion point, I have an attribute, I have justification, and I have annotative, etc. The first decision I have to make is the first piece of text I'm on here, I have to decide, do I want it to show up with my block or do I not want it to show up with my block? A lot of times the first tag that we put on here is the name of the part. So I want to make that visible so that when I insert the block, you will see the name of the part. The next attribute I add may be the cost of the part. I may not want that to come in and show up on my block, but I still want it tied to the block. So I can set that as invisible. So before I start adding attributes, I need to think about what I want to have visible in my block and what I do not want to have visible in my block. The first attribute I'm going to add is the part name, and I want it to be visible, and so I'm not going to check invisible, and I am going to check lock position. In the attribute section, I have to specify the tag. This is like a field or column name for the attribute. For example, enter the word cost if the attribute will contain cost information. The tag is converted to uppercase and cannot contain spaces or exclamation points. So for my example, I'm going to put in part name, and it's all going to be one word. The next part is the prompt. This is similar to the tag, but it can contain spaces, and usually I put a question in here. What is the name of the part? Question mark. This is helpful for others who are using this same block. And then in the default, I want to put the actual name of the part that it is typically called. And in our case, it is part 1. I typically want to justify it to the center, and I want my text style to be my annotative text style that I'm using, and I do want annotative with a check mark in it. This helps make my text change accordingly. Now I'm ready to click on OK, and I'm going to place this attribute right here in the middle. My scale is at 1:1, so my text is pretty small. Again, I want to put my text on the correct layer. I have now added one attribute, but I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more. I'm going to go back to Insert and to Define Attributes. This time I'm going to put who is the manufacturer of this part. This way, if I have to replace this part, I know which manufacturer it came from. This attribute I want to be invisible because I don't want it to show up on my part. I only want this information so I can pull it off of the part. As a reminder, the tag doesn't have to be a full description. So I'm just going to put in MANUF. Just enough information so when the tag pops up, you know what it is. On the prompt, I'm going to type in who is the manufacturer? Question mark. For the default, since this part came from Grainger, I'm going to put in the word Grainger. And again, I'm going to do center justification. This time to get everything to line up the way that I want it to, especially if I am showing all the attributes. I like to put a check mark in a line below previous attribute definition and click on OK. And it placed that one right underneath the original one. And you'll notice it's putting the actual tag, it's not putting the default or the question. Again, I need to move that tag to my text layer. Now I'm going to add one more attribute. And I'm going to put this as cost. And then I'm going to type in how much is the part. Then I'm going to put in $50. Again, I want to do center, and again I want to do a line, and I say OK. Everything looks good, and now that I have my attributes in place, now I make my block. It is best to create your attributes and then create your block. You don't want to do it in the other order, it's much harder. Now I am ready to go to create block. I am going to name this part 3. I know in our default we put part 1, but I already have a part 1 block, so I'm going to make this a part 3 block. I'm going to pick the same pick point, select the object, and make sure I get the text this time. I don't need to check annotative because I already did that in my text, and I'm going to say OK. So you'll see now my attributes are popping up. How much is the part? My default was $50. Let's say since this block was created that the price of the part has actually gone up to $75, so I can change that here. Next is who is the manufacturer. We put in Grainger as a default. If that had changed, I could change that there. And then when I get to what is the name of the part, I have part 1 in there, so I can change that to be actually part 3. Then I say OK. So you'll notice now all that shows up is the one attribute that I set as visible. The other attributes do not show up, but they are still tied to the block. Now that I have this block created, what can I do with this information? There are a couple different things I can do with this information. You can go to the top right and do a data extraction. You will get this data extraction box. A lot of places you work will already have a template set up for this, so you can easily pull the information out that you use all the time. I don't have that on here, so I'm going to do create a new data extraction. I'm going to click on next, and again I need to save this in my typical save location. I'm going to save mine as data, and you'll see it's a .dxe file. And then I will click on save. Here it tells me where it's at. It says drawing sheets include current drawing. I can select the objects, whatever I want to do. On mine, I'm just going to pick select objects in the current drawing because I don't want it to do everything on my sheet, just the block that I wanted to do. Then I'm going to click on the button to the right to select the objects in my drawing. I'm going to select all my objects, including my text, and then I'm going to hit next. You can see from the chart it pulled out all the information that was tied to the block. In the chart it has an attribute definition, it has a circle, it has a part 3, and it has a polyline. The polyline represents my rectangle, and of course the circle represents the circle in my drawing. Those two I really don't need to pull the data from, so I'm going to uncheck those. I'm going to click on next. Once I do that, it comes up with a lot more attributes and such that are tied to this block. The only things I'm concerned about are my attributes. So if I uncheck everything but attribute, most of that will go away. All that I have left are the ones that I created, my cost, my manufacturer, and my part name. I'm going to click on next. You can see it created a table for me. The first column is the count or the number of parts, and I have one part. And it gave me the name, it gave me the cost, and the manufacturer. I have created all this information here, and I can go to next. In this box it gives me a couple choices. I can insert the data as a table into my drawing, or I can output it into an external file such as an Excel sheet or a text document. I'm going to do it as a data extraction into my drawing. I'm going to click on next. It takes me to my table dialog box. We didn't really talk about tables. Tables are under the annotation tab. This is the standard table dialog box. It'll have titles, it'll have headers, and it'll have data categories. I'm going to leave it just like it is. I'm going to click on next. Then I'm going to do finish. It's going to take me to my drawing, and it gives me a box. That is my table. If I click on my drawing, here's my table. I can completely edit this table by going into the individual cells. So this concludes the video on attributes. In the next video, we will go over your assignment for creating your title block into your template and your final project.